This one is for all of my emotional eaters out there. Today, we're talking about how to handle strong emotions like loneliness or stress or boredom or anxiety without turning to food so that you can have a positive relationship with food without having this love-hate relationship, feeling like you love food, but you hate the fact that you use it as comfort, as an emotional crutch. So let's get into it. Welcome to the Live Unrestricted podcast, a show where you'll learn how to heal your relationship with food and your body so that you can focus your time and energy on more important things like your personal growth. I'm your host, Sabrina Magna, food freedom coach, and my mission is to help make your life happier and healthier without stress, overwhelm, or guilt about food. If you love the show, please do go out and share it. And if you're looking for support with your relationship with food, details about my programs are in the show notes. Thanks for spending time with me today. Now let's jump in. Hey, my friend, welcome back to the show. I was just thinking before I started recording this podcast, how cool it is that I get to just be here behind the mic and I get to share about the things that I really love and that can make a really big impact on your life and on your relationship with food. So I'm really grateful that you're here and that you're listening. And if you've been a listener since day one, an OG, I'm so grateful for you. If you're a new listener, then welcome. Just the fact that you take this time out of your busy life to invest in your own personal growth is massive. And if you hear a train go by in the background right now, I apologize if my mic is not able to drown that out. I actually have a train that goes by in my backyard like all day long. And when I first moved into this apartment, I did not know how I was going to deal with that. I have to say, there's a train that goes by probably every 15 minutes. And the truth is that you eventually get used to it. You eventually get used to the sound, and even at night, you get used to the lights. But if you hear that noise in the background, I apologize. Anyways, what I was saying before I got distracted is I am really grateful for you, and I commend you for taking this time out of your life to dedicate towards making your life better and happier. So that's my little tangent. And today we are talking about emotional eating. And more specifically, we're talking about how to handle those hard emotions, the ones that we all feel, the stress, the anxiety, the boredom, the loneliness, without turning to food. And what you're actually going to hear is a little snippet from my Food Freedom Academy coaching call. So last night we were having a coaching call. It's one of our very first ones from this cohort. And we were talking about this notion of what I call shoulding yourself. And it's when you're constantly feeling like you should be doing something, like you should be somewhere else, like you should be doing better. And what that does is it creates so much pressure on you because no matter what you're doing, you feel like you're not being good enough, like you're not doing enough. And it feels like this constant chatter in your mind of all of the things that you should be doing, that you could be improving. And that's a really tough way to live. And so I was coaching one of my clients through this because she was saying how much pressure she's constantly putting on herself to be doing better. And I asked her the question of like, where do you think that's coming from? Because in the coaching that I do, we don't just talk surface level, because when you're just touching on the surface level, you're going to get surface level results. And the thing about surface level results is that they are temporary because they don't actually get to the root cause of our behaviors and our mindsets. So I asked her, where do you think that's coming from? And she answered in a very honest and vulnerable way. I think it's because I'm afraid to feel the emotions that are hiding underneath that. And so instead, I'm constantly doing things. I'm constantly thinking about what I should be doing. I'm eating the emotions away. And when we're talking about the concept of eating our emotions away, that kind of lit this light in my mind, because this is a conversation that's really important to have. If you're someone who feels like you numb your emotions, you distract yourself, you constantly do something so that you don't have to address what's really going on under the surface. And then when you tie in all of the bad advice that you see on social media, like just chew gum or go for a walk or eat popcorn, or I'm trying to think of what are some of the other pieces of advice that I used to follow when I struggled with emotional eating, because this used to be me. Every day after 8 p.m., it's like all bets were off, the floodgates were open, and I would eat everything in my kitchen once my parents had gone downstairs to watch their TV and their movies, and I was alone in the kitchen. And most of the time, it wasn't because I was physically hungry, but I never knew what I was doing, and I didn't know why I was doing it. I don't think I even tried to pause and ask myself those questions, because you're so caught up in the negative self-talk and you're so busy blaming yourself, being hard on yourself, that we never take the time to slow down and ask ourselves really important questions that could set you free from these patterns. We're always in a rush to get somewhere. For example, to lose the weight, to finish the diet. We're so in a rush and we're so busy that we end up missing the reason why we keep struggling. So that's what we really do inside the program, is we slow down to help you dig a little bit deeper and unearth what is causing you to do these behaviors in the first place. Because imagine that you had done that maybe 20 years ago, instead of struggling another 20 years of putting a Band-Aid solution and always doing the fad diets or trying to address the surface level problems. Imagine instead you had gone to the root cause of these behaviors and these issues and these challenges right from the beginning, how much pain and suffering you could have saved yourself. So what I'm going to play for you is a snippet of a real life coaching session that I had inside Food Freedom Academy last night. And I don't think I'm going to give too much away. Basically, what you're going to learn is how to handle tough emotions without turning to food for comfort. So I'm going to share with you practical strategies and tips that have helped me and hundreds of my clients not only overcome emotional eating, but develop really valuable skills and emotional resilience that they bring into all areas of their life. Because you're always going to feel negative emotions. That's just human experience. You're going to go through hard times. You're going to experience stressful events. So if you don't know how to handle those emotions without leaning on food, then you're always going to struggle with emotional eating. So I'm going to play that clip for you, and stick around until the very end, because I'm going to share with you a resource that's going to help you take what I'm teaching inside of this episode and apply it to your own life. So I'm going to share that resource with you at the very end. So stick around, and I'm going to play that coaching session for you.
I think I'm afraid I will actually have to feel the things that I'm trying to not feel by eating them away or shitting them away, or I'm like circling the drain, trying not to feel the actual things that I need to feel to let it go.
Okay, so now we're getting into a very different conversation, but I do want to go here because I'm sure that a lot of you are going to benefit from this conversation. How many of you feel like you have a hard time, put a yes or no in the comments, feeling your emotions, or not running away from them, not distracting, not numbing, not pushing them down? So maybe that could look like eating instead, or overworking, or maybe it's drinking, or just doing anything that will distract you from feeling what you're feeling. Yes. Okay. So we're going to talk about how to get comfortable with feeling negative emotions. Now, of course, we're not going to go into the realm of trauma, big T trauma. That's not where we're going to go. And if you do have big T trauma, you want to work with a specialist, with a therapist. But when it comes to the day-to-day negative emotions, there's one thing that I heard when I first started my personal development work, and it was that life is 50% positive emotion and 50% negative emotion. And that just very fact helped me a lot because it's made me stop feeling so bad about feeling negative emotions. There's this toxic positivity that goes around, and especially in the personal development world, just think positive thoughts, just feel better, just change your thoughts. And I want you to know that all the tools that I share inside the program, yes, it is there to help you have positive thoughts, and it is there to help you feel better. But I'm not going to lie to you and pretend that you're never going to have negative thoughts or never going to go through a negative experience, because life is 50-50. And you're going to see that it's very normal as you go through this program that you go from feeling numb and feeling like you're always on autopilot and just going through the motions to feeling stronger emotions on both levels. I remember when I went to Italy, which was the trip that made me realize I had an eating disorder. And when I went to Italy, I remember being there on the trip of my life and thinking, this doesn't feel like I thought it would. I'm not feeling the same kind of joy and bewilderment as some of my friends. And that was so painful for me because I was like, I am literally in the best country in the world right now, and I feel just meh. And as I started doing the work, I really realized that I was just constantly feeling numb. I didn't want to feel negative emotions. And then what that did is it didn't help me feel really positive emotions. And if you look at the heartbeat, a dead heartbeat is a straight line. But when you're alive, you're feeling both the positive and the negative. So what's really helpful when it comes to feeling negative emotions is a few things. So I don't know if I have the graphic with me right now, but we'll get to it on another coaching call. I want you to imagine a wave. That's what an emotion is. It's a wave. And so you can all draw that in your notebook, this emotion wave. What happens with an emotion is a vibration in your body. And sometimes that vibration can be really intense that you feel the pain. Like I've never been through a really, really tough heartbreak, but I know that a lot of my friends have experienced that before, and you feel like physical pain in your body. And so an emotion is a vibration that goes through your body, and it typically comes from a thought. So when an emotion arises, what tends to happen is it starts to rise up, and then it will eventually reach a peak before it dies down. But what most people will do is they don't allow it to peak because they start to feel it rise up, the stress and the overwhelm and the loneliness and the boredom. And we have never been taught how to feel negative emotions. We've developed this coping mechanism, and this is for survival. Our brains and our nervous system is wired for survival. And so it will perceive a negative emotion as a threat if you believe that negative emotions should not be felt. If you believe that there is something wrong with feeling stressed or bored or lonely. And if you're so used to pushing it down, it's kind of like when you're trying to push a beach ball underwater, you create pressure and you push it down and you push it down, and eventually you're not able to push it down anymore. And it comes back and it's a mess and it splashes everywhere. And that's what happens with these negative emotions is we push it down. And then because we're not really skilled in the skill of labeling these emotions and actually giving them attention, we just push them down and we pretend they're not there. And then it rises up and you just feel terrible, but you don't know why. And so that's what it feels like when you're constantly numbing or distracting, is there's so much going on internally and you don't always know why, and you can't put your finger on it and you can't label it. So when you start feeling those negative emotions rise up, what's really helpful is to be able to just label it when it happens. Because when you label the emotion, and if you go on Google and you look up emotion wheel, you're going to be able to see all of the different emotions that are there. And believe it or not, there's more emotions than just happy and sad. There's going to be lonely, there's going to be bored, there's going to be excited, there's going to be joyful and love. So there's going to be all of the emotions there that are going to help you get acquainted with the different sensations and being able to label it. Because emotions, when you don't label them, what it's really like is, I want you to imagine that you're at a dinner party and there is this really negative emotion sitting on your lap and it's really heavy and you're not able to have conversations with anyone else because this emotion is blinding you and you're not able to really move and it feels really, really heavy. And when you label it and when you get to create distance between you and your emotion, you're not getting rid of it, but you're taking it away from your lap and you're sitting it next to you. And you're saying, I'm recognizing that you're there. I'm seeing you, but I'm not going to allow you to control me or to blind me or to feel as heavy. So the first thing, when you start noticing this emotion and you feel it when you have a negative emotion, you feel it coming up, is to just notice it and say, okay, I'm starting to feel a negative emotion. What am I feeling right now? Am I feeling stressed, overwhelmed, anxious? Because when you look at the self-coaching model, CTFAR, in the middle is the feelings one. And what I said last week is that we're going to be doing a lot of work to rewire your thought processes, but it's a lot harder to notice what am I thinking than it is to notice what am I feeling. So asking yourself, okay, what am I feeling right now? And if you need, go to that emotion wheel and start writing it down and allow yourself to not think that there's something wrong with feeling this. Because the more you put pressure on yourself, the worse you feel. And so if you're able to say, okay, this is one of those times where I'm feeling negative emotions, we tend to think that when we have a negative emotion, it's permanent. We're always going to feel this way. I don't know if any of you have ever been in a funk. I live in Montreal, Canada. Winter tends to be very funky because we don't get much daylight. It's not awesome. And when you're in a funk or when you're experiencing a negative emotion, you start to feel like you're always going to feel like this. I'm never going to feel better. This is always going to be me. And when you get out of it, you're like, oh no, this was temporary. And so the more you start noticing that, okay, I'm able to feel negative emotions and I didn't die and I was able to just sit with it, then you're going to build something called emotional resilience. And so at the beginning, it is normal to feel a little bit, if you're an emotional eater, to feel a little bit of grief at the beginning that you notice, oh, I no longer use food to push down my emotions. Now I'm starting to feel them more. And at the beginning, that might feel a little bit harder. But over time, what you notice is that you feel really empowered by having coping mechanisms that don't involve bringing even more negative emotions into your life. Getting used to feeling, if I were to summarize this, when you start noticing those waves of negative emotions come up, step one is notice it in your body and notice where it comes up in your body. Do you feel a knot in your stomach? Or does it feel really heavy on your chest? This is going to help you not only with feeling these negative emotions and emotional resiliency, but this is also going to help you get connected with your body, which is going to help you with your hunger and fullness cues. Because if you're walking around feeling super disconnected from your body, It can be really hard to navigate eating at the same time. So being able to notice and ask yourself, where do I feel this in my body? This is a sensation. It's not going to kill me. So where do I feel this in my body? And then labeling it. When you label it, you give it less power. That's what emotions want. They want to feel powerful. And have you ever noticed that the more you try not to feel something, it feels worse? The more you try to push it down, the more power it has over you. No, I'm not stressed. I'm not overwhelmed. I'm not bored. I'm not lonely. No, I am. And that's a normal human emotion. And there's nothing wrong with me for feeling that way. And when you notice that you can give yourself more compassion, the emotion is going to move through your body and then it's going to start to die down. When you are able to label your emotion, what then happens is that you can also get clarity on what you need. Because if you're noticing that you're feeling lonely, food might numb that for a couple of minutes, but the emotions will come back after. We've all experienced this. We turn to food to nurse an emotion, and then the emotion comes back, and then it feels even worse because now you have the guilt and the shame from eating. So noticing and label the emotion, what it can do is it can help you get clarity on what do I actually need to nurse this emotional desire. If I'm lonely, I haven't called a friend in a long time. Let me call a friend. If I'm bored, where do I need to get more joy in my life? Maybe I have to explore some different hobbies, some new things to bring me enjoyment. If I'm feeling anxious or if I'm feeling stress, what are some things that typically help soothe me? Maybe that's going for a walk or having a loved one hug you or snuggling with your dog. So feeling the emotion, labeling it, and then helping you get clarity on what's actually going to help satisfy that need can be really helpful. So I hope this conversation was helpful for all of you, because this is something that's going to be a common theme through this all, because if you're here, chances are you're going to experience some negative emotions at some point in your life. So this is going to be something that you can bring into your future for as long as you live. Okay, well, that was fun. And I hope that you got a lot of value out of that conversation. I know that all the members inside the Academy took so many notes during that coaching session and got a lot out of it, which is the reason why I wanted to share it with you as well. So as I promised at the beginning of this episode, I want to share with you a resource that's going to help you take everything that you learned today and apply it to your own life. So if you go into the show notes or you go to the URL sabrinamagna.com/emotional eating workbook, all one word, but again, that link is going to be in the show notes. I'm going to share with you my emotional eating workbook. So if you want to end your pattern of turning to food for comfort and develop healthier coping mechanisms without turning to food, so that you can in turn have a healthier relationship with food and eat when you're hungry and stop when you're full instead of eating for emotional reasons, you're going to gain so much out of this workbook. And I would love to know your biggest takeaway from today's episode. So head to Instagram, find me at sabrina.magna.health. That's my handle. And send me a DM and let me know your biggest takeaway, or take a screenshot of you listening to this episode on whatever device you're on and tag me in your story. I want to see it. I'm going to reshare it. Thank you so much for listening, and I will see you on the next episode. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. If you found it valuable, I would love if you would share it with someone you know that could benefit. If you're loving the show, don't forget to subscribe over on Apple Podcasts so you don't miss a single episode. I really love hearing feedback from you, so please leave a rating and review over on Apple to help us get in the ears of more people who need it the most. Finally, come hang out with me on Instagram at Sabrina Magna Health for more educational content and get up close and personal with me. Thank you so much for being here, and I'll see you on the next episode.